Hello?
Hello?
Hello, yes. Is this Ryan?
It is.
Oh, hello, Ryan. My name's Richard.
How are you?
Not too bad, thanks. I'm not sure if you're running early or I'm running late.
I saw your initial log on.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm not sure if Charlene's going to be joining us. I believe she's out of the office.
All right.
Okay. Now, let me just stop this monitor moving around. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you fine. If you
Okay.
don't mind, I prefer to keep my camera off purely
That's
because
fine.
of the connectivity.
That's all right. I'm just going to I'm just going to share a screen because you probably don't actually want to look at me. Um, is it just you joining us today, Ryan?
Yes.
Okay, we'll get started then.
I'll do the technical sort of overview of it and report back as needed.
Okay. Let me just, so you should now be seeing my screen,
Yep.
which should look like should top left, it should say localhost rules config dashboard. It
Yep.
looks like a
I can
solo
see that.
console. Okay. So just a little bit of background. I'm actually a developer, but anyway, just a couple of years started working with a product called Message Broker. Started developing some best practices for the organization I was working with, which didn't go down too well because no one really was really interested in it. But I tried my hardest and developed a bunch of, I guess, best practices for naming and whatnot for the organization. Automated them as part of a tool and sort of showed everyone and that sort of stopped there. But it's something I've always thought about, the concept of code quality and automatic peer reviews and automatic analysis of code. So jump forward a couple of years, and a couple of years later, maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, a product came out called Sonar Cube, which is a continuous code inspection tool. So I'm not quite sure if you've come across it before.
So I've worked quite extensively with Message Broker and the latest IIB stuff, and I've
Okay.
heard of Sonar.
Okay.
But obviously, from a Java perspective, it's continuous integration is a lot easier to manage within Java,
Yeah.
and it's one of the bugbears that I have at the moment with some of the IBM tools.
Yeah. I think they are getting better, but they still don't fare, or they don't handle themselves as well as the, I guess, the open source world, or even some of the TFS and whatnot out there.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but and so this product called Sonar came out, which sits into the continuous integration, continuous delivery sort of pipeline that a lot of organizations are aiming for.
Yeah.
So what I started using Sonar maybe 3 years ago or so, on and off with JP Morgan. Just looking at our bespoke application development, mostly in the Java space. I was part of a reasonably big rollout of it for Goldman Sachs across all the Goldman Sachs or across the units I was involved in. And then when I got back to Australia, I started thinking about the message broker side of things again, and we started developing these tools for message broker developers, which essentially sits within this Sonar ecosystem. So that's a little bit of a background. So essentially what we're aiming for this product is that it provides that that Sonar, first off, that Sonar dashboard, or that Sonar snapshot in time of where your product sits, so or how your code sits as far as your quality goes. Trying to look at not just from the code quality perspective, but trying to leverage things like either web dev or Confluence and things like that to actually improve the team's knowledge and manage the team's understanding of the architecture, and also extending that into just general business and general operations understanding of what applications are doing, which is where the diagramming component comes into, which we'll jump into in a second. So probably the easiest thing is I'll give you a quick demonstration, give you an idea where we're going. Do you have any questions before I start things, right? Okay.
I'll stop you if I do have a question or two.
Okay, so I'll start with a fairly simple demonstration. We do have it set up with, and you should be able to see Jenkins here. We do have it set up with Jenkins as a job, but I'll just do the fairly simple. Actually, I'll just quickly log in here and just clear off some of these other things. Let me just clear out some of these other jobs. Select all, delete. Right, just for that deletes. So basically what I've got set here is I've set up a Sonar project, just looking at some odds and ends of message broker code. So it's not actually real code from any real project, but there's elements from various organizations that are sort of trialing it or using it at the moment. So some of it's real code, but the name's been changed to protect the innocent. So essentially what we've got here is just a command prompt. We just run our report, fairly standard sort of stuff. It's configured in this case to just running against a local Postgres database, which gives us the benefit of at least be able to migrate across versions. So I've got a couple of different versions set up here. I think 4.1.2, 4.3.1, and we're just trialing 5.1 for our customers. One of our customers is looking forward to, or looking to moving forward onto 5.1. So it's a fairly small code base that we just analyzed. 100 files, I think. Let me just go back to the dashboard. We'll just go back to the dashboard. We'll go into a demo. 181 files. So the files that sort of that we're looking at doing our analysis on, or a static analysis on, I mean, you fairly standard sort of message broker code. So your message flows and your subflows, your ESQL files. It does do Java. We're looking at extending our extending into having some specific Java rules, because we have one customer that wants to enforce some particular Java coding standards to comply with what they're doing with message broker, which is a case of something we need to extend something called PMD rules in the Java space. So there's just sort of your basic your regular building blocks, I guess you call them. It also goes into your XSL files. So it looks at your style sheets, looks at your MQ definitions, so your MQSC files, if you're using MQSC files to build your Q definitions or define your Q definitions for building at your into your environments, and also there's a couple other ones. There's schema files for particular customers, and the last one is your Ant scripts. So what it will try to do is it'll try and look through your Ant scripts to see if you're using particular patterns of builds and try and map them back to the ones that you've got defined in your project. So if you've got a message flow in your project and you've got a message flow in your Ant script, then it says, oh, that's good. If you've got a message flow in your Ant script, but you don't have it in your project, it sort of gives you a bit of a warning bell. Say, well, you're trying to deploy something, but I'm not sure where I'm supposed to be getting it from. So they're the main five or six file types it goes over. So there's two parts of the dashboard we're sort of looking at here. One is the metrics, which are the reasonably self-explanatory. Not as useful, but they do give a little bit of value and a little bit of insight into the overall code complexity mostly. Just a general summary of some message broker metrics, for example, nodes. So those are just how many nodes are in the whole project and which flows actually have the most nodes. So for example, here we've got a particular flow that's got 23 nodes, so we could say that's probably our most complicated one. And then we can do our navigations around to see a little bit of information about our flow with 23 nodes. Oops. And there's some issues. Go back to the dashboard. The number of MQ input nodes.
What sort of validation are you doing on those files? Because you say there's some issues there.
Okay, yeah, I can jump straight into the validation. So at the moment, I think there's 167 violations that we look at. So depending on the file type.
Okay, so if you open up your workspace, will you see those violations there?
No, no, it doesn't. Message broker, the the message broker doesn't tie into to Sonar currently.
Okay.
I believe there is a Sonar plugin for Eclipse, but the Eclipse that comes pre-packaged with Message Broker is like very, or quite a few versions behind. So it's something that's, once Eclipse gets updated, or the Eclipse deployed within Message Broker gets updated, you could look to include the plugin there. We've got people who have tried to include Sonar, just not particularly just for our plugin, just generally include Sonar within older Eclipse versions, and just doesn't play well. So you need to run forward, I guess, with your or IBM needs to go forward with their toolkit versions before it will play well with Sonar.
Okay.
Yep. So at the moment, the statistics or the violations are pretty much only available through the console. For Message Broker. Other programming languages, it does allow you to view them from your native environment. So I think there's an IntelliJ and an Eclipse plugin that ties into Sonar.
Right. Okay. Okay.
So the sort of violations we are looking at is dependent on the file type. So there's some fairly simple ones. And probably the easiest thing is just go through, have a quick look at the quality profile. So I'll just sort of jump through a few just to give you an idea. So there are a lot there, and it's one of those things you'd have to run it against your code to see what it spits out, to decide what's important and what's not, and what's applicable to your coding style and your architectural style. So, so the first one, properties, is not included in the map and will be empty when the node finishes. So this is for when you're running a message broker message map, and you do the mapping from different fields to different fields. This is just saying that if you were relying on properties later on down the flow, it's probably going to not work because you haven't included them. Columns being referenced in the database schema. So this is what it does is, as part of the thing I haven't got to yet, which is the architectural overview, it pulls apart all the SQL that it can find in your project, and that's whether it's in a map file, or it's starting to the map files, ESQL, or in your flows. It pulls apart the SQL it finds, builds a table at the end to give you something to take you to DBAs to work with them to say, well, this is how our application, or what our application is doing from the database side of things. Are you happy with this? And what can you suggest as far as tuning goes? But what this is trying to do is try to cover off where you might have multiple paths through your code. And what it's going to try and do is work out all the places you're accessing the database, and if it can't find a table definition, or it can't find a column definition, or it can't find an index for how you've written your code, it's going to give you a warning to say, well, you might be referencing a column that doesn't exist, or you might be referencing a table you haven't defined in databases yet.
Right. Okay. So you actually explicitly say how you wanted to do the validation.
Yeah. So what you can do, generally it does most of these validations, it just does them, and then you turn on and off the ones you want to see. And you set these on the left here. You see these severity criticals, so you can just disable it to say I'm not interested at all. You set it minor. You can set it a blocker. You can set it in between, and then you can build up what we call is the quality gate, which I'll show you in a second.
Yep.
So there's a whole bunch, basically a whole bunch of checks that cover off like line lengths for SQL, if conditions in SQL, missing case statements in style sheets. Unused variables, unreferenced subflows, unreferenced procedures in the SQL, unattached connections and nodes, some more, I guess, a bit more convoluted ones where it goes through your ESQL. So it finds all your filter nodes, go through the ESQL and your filter nodes, and checks to see whether or not the filter node's trying to update the message. If it does, it warns you to say, well, you can't do that. Another one it does is with compute nodes, is it tries to work out how many outputs, how many exit points you've got for a compute node, and how many exit points you've defined in your ESQL that maps to it, and then tries to match those up and tells you if you're basically saying you're doing a propagate to somewhere that doesn't exist. It tells you that's a potential bug.
Okay.
What else? queue definition, descriptions, backout thresholds, those sorts of things on defining queues. Let's have a look. Some of these with the brackets, like for example this one here, where we've basically built something for a particular customer, and you probably won't find it very useful, but it's probably one of the things you'd turn off.
Can you add your own ones?
We do add them for people. So we customize it for people. We don't. I should say we customize. We add new rules for people. We don't customize existing rules for customers. We add new rules based on existing rules, so that whoever's using a rule doesn't have a regression issue when you introduce something for a particular customer. There's no way of programmatically doing it. Just the nature of these sort of niche languages, they're not as supported within the same ecosystem as, say, Java is. So Java, you can write your own custom rules. Message break, you can't.
Okay, so no, I'm saying, like, can I write my own validation?
No. What if you wanted something that the tool doesn't cover, or if it looks like something that the tool does cover, you just sort of describe it and we include it. Yeah. Sorry, what was that?
Just something hypothetical.
Oh, okay.
Like I see there, you've got one that says use the as bit stream instead of the bit stream. So, if I want to say, like, put some sort of design patterns down as part of your validation.
Mm-hmm.
If you spot this sort of pattern in the code, like an if within an if within an if, rather use a case statement.
Yep. So it does those sorts of checks. I think there is one in there to say the number of nested ifs, and I think there's actually a threshold in there, so you set it to 5 or something like that. I think it defaults to 5. I'd have to check. I'd have to get back to you on some of the particular ones. We can define them, or we add them for people, but you can't define them yourself. So if you can describe it, we can add it.
Okay, so then it becomes, what you're saying is, if I say to you, I want this sort of validation, you'll obviously go to sort of like a forum that will decide, yes, this is a new one that we can add, and then everybody gets it.
Yeah, and everyone gets it. And what will generally happen is people will just turn it off if they're not interested.
Okay. That's fine.
Or essentially people will turn it off because we've got the with the exact same logic for the same rule, except negated. So one customer wants everything set this way, and another customer wants everything set the exact opposite way. So we've got a couple of rules very, very similar in wording, but one of them is for a particular way.
Yep. Okay.
What else? What else is in there? There's lots. There's architectural ones, like if you've got a SOAP call but you haven't all the different paths through, or you've got a SOAP input but not all the paths have a SOAP reply, and then it tells you that not all paths actually may reply to your message. Flows should write not write to queues. They should write to aliases. So this is one of the ones that tries to work out what your if you're writing to a queue, it tries to go through your queue definition, work out whether it's a queue topic or an alias, and if it's a queue, it warns you. So there's a whole bunch there, basically.
So it's like, you've covered 99% of all possible validations. It would be the exception that I'd come up with one and say, okay, I'm not seeing this one.
Yeah, well, we try to. Yeah, unfortunately, the nature of the message broker developers that we deal with, everyone does it slightly differently. So we cover off. Yeah, I'd hazard to guess we wouldn't cover off 99%. We cover off the 50%, and then as people ask for things, we sort of work out whether or not they're
viable or not.
So for the general community, we say, yeah, that's a good idea. We'll put that in. I think everyone will want that. Or we'll say, oh, that's a bit odd. We're going to put that at a really low priority unless you want to ask for use up some of your service agreement, and we'll put it in for you in the next couple of days. So it just depends on the nature of it. What else? Okay, so they're the checks. So you turn the checks on that you're interested in. You turn the checks off that you're not interested. You set these severity levels for the ones that are important to you, and lower it for the ones that aren't. That gets into something called quality gates, and this came out recently, I think with Sonar 4. So the first part of the equation is just running a report, having that report, or first start of the process, having that report in front of your developers so they can go and say, okay, well, this is the quality of the code. I've checked some stuff in and the quality code's fallen, the quality code's risen. Good for me if it's improved, bad for me if it hasn't. And then they can look through the violations and work out what you want to fix. It does tie into things like Jira, so you can go through the violations and then create issues in the back of those things. Right. I know the Jira and the bug tracking support's a lot better in version 5. I don't have actually Jira installed here, but I believe the version 5.1, the issues management is a lot better. So it's definitely an argument for trying it out with version 5. So that's what the developer does in the day-to-day business. The next step is like the build integration, the continuous integration. So what you do for that is you set up this quality gate. So you set up your profile, set up your quality profile to say what sort of bugs you're interested in, what sort of potential bugs you're looking in, and then you set up what's called a quality profile, which is a line in the sand where you want the product to complain if the quality drops. And this is for once you've got some standards in there. So you get your standards, your developers agree to your standards, and you start working towards them, and you include these quality gates. The quality gate basically ties in with your build server, and so when you run it through the build server, you include something called the build breaker in Sonar, so that when you actually run your report, we'll just do that now actually. So if we look here, so when you run your report, see it's running. Console output. So assume I've actually done a real change. I've made a change to the code and I've checked it in. I haven't, but so you could imagine your build trigger here is triggered by a change in Subversion or CVS.
Okay.
So it's just running the analysis now. It's all good. All good. All good. Gets to the end. Goes through. Make sure I've turned up now. Successful. Oh, okay. Let me turn my. Okay, so that's a build. That's a build working. Let me just turn. Let me just turn my oh, there you go. I've deleted my project. Let me just turn that on. So what I've now I've turned the quality gate in. Turn the quality gate on for We'll just turn it on for all. And then I'm just going to run that again. So that was a bad example because it didn't break. Yeah, so this is for your continuous integration process where you take your code, you run your Sonar analysis. As long as it passes your mandatory checks, you can continue on with your build, deploy it into a development environment. If it doesn't, stops dead in its tracks and then ties into whatever build system you've got. So if you've got Bamboo or TFS or whichever one you've got with the various bells and whistles, you can send emails, turn on flashing lights, which someone was telling me that I was presenting this at a technical conference a couple of days ago, and they would say when their build breaks, they set off a flashy light on top of the developer's desk to say you broke the build.
Yeah, I've actually witnessed that.
Yeah, it was an NGO, and there you go. So we broke the build. So basically, it said, well, I've broken the build because Sonar failed because you've got more than one blocker issue. And then we go back into our console.
Okay.
Look at our project. And I'm not sure why it comes up differently for running through Jenkins, but yeah, it shows up with the big red quality gate. And we go in the project and it tells you the project failed for the following reasons.
Okay. Can you drill down into that, what that one is?
Oh, good question. I don't believe. Oh, it does track things over time. Let me have a look. So it does say you've got more. So this one, it's saying that this one broke it, but it's not saying. But if you had a threshold of 10 and you had 9 before, it's not. I don't think it'll tell you which the 10th one is.
Okay.
I could be wrong though. I could be wrong. There
so
are.
I want to know. Okay, so this looks exactly what I've been after for a number of years. Like from a CI point of view, from Message Broker, it's taking the build and actually validating the build and getting it ready.
Yep.
Now the next step is to say, okay, from this information, how do I then feed it back into the code to make it more robust, better?
Well, that's when you get into your developer. I guess you try to get into your short iteration. So you probably don't want to be doing this at the end of 3 months and then going, oh, we can't build our code, we can't deliver it. It's probably something you want to be doing every day or every second day.
Yes, correct.
Developers check something in, and then developer gets an email back saying you broke the build because the quality fell, and then it starts that discussion of, oh, I just forgot about an unused variable and I forgot the new standard or something like that. Or maybe it actually triggers that more architectural question of are we putting this flow together in the right way?
Yeah.
Or it could be as simple as, oh, I did forget to add the queue definition file, and I did forget to update the database with the column I added. So, and then they just make those changes and let it run again, and hopefully it solves the issue. So it depends on the nature of the issue and depends on the code that's changing.
So this is a daily sort of thing, like even a regular multi-day type of activity.
Yep.
What about somebody in a technical lead type of role that he's got 10 developers and he's having to review all their code? How does he, like overall, instead of going line by line, how does he be able to look at all the code from this point of view, from having a look at something like this reporting or dashboards or something?
So there are, the Sonar ecosystem is quite well developed, and I said the version 5 does do a lot to do with more tracking.
Yes.
There's a one out there, a product out there by the Sonar developers called Sonar. I think it's called Sonar Cockpit or something like that. And I'll try and hunt around for the link, and if I get your email address, I'll send it through. Or developer Cockpit. I can't remember. It was one of those. And what that will actually do, it will segregate changes per developer. To say that which developer made which change, which is tied to which particular fall in quality. So you can actually divide up your time amongst your 10 developers and look at the changes that each developer's done.
Okay, great.
You still doesn't integrate. It doesn't actually integrate with your message breaker toolkit. But if you're looking at if you know the line of the file, or if you know the file and the bit of text you're looking for, then it's just a matter of going and updating from your version control system, jumping back in your environment and saying, well, it's complaining about this particular issue. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and as I said, it's triggered by whatever build server you want to do. So there's no reason you can't have your team leads or your architect or your product manager just being able to run this thing whenever they want. Yep. So that's build breaking and quality gates, and that's your quality profile, which feeds into those two. So probably the last thing to demonstrate is sort of one of the value adds we've been playing around with, to do with knowledge transfer. So we're quite a few places where the architecture draws some diagrams, and lo and behold, 6 months later, the diagrams look nothing like what the architecture is intended to be, and no one wants to update those diagrams, and no one wants to update in the documentation. So Message Broker itself has got I think there's an option in one of the menus to export a flow, so it exports all this documentation about a flow. So you can take that, update it into your wiki or your Confluence page or whichever tool you choose to use, and try and track information about your project that way. Taking a slightly different approach of stale information is worse than no information. So what we've done, and I'm just double check it's actually running, part of and you might bear with me for a second, so part of what the plugin does is that because it's actually going through all your flows, it's going through all your SQL, all your queue definitions, it's going through all this information, it's building an object graph in memory to tell you about your violations and whatnot. It's the next step was just to make that information usable and consumable. not just from the point of view of violations, but let's see if Mongoose is running. Well, it is running. Cool. Okay. Let me just double look here. Tab. Yeah, the next step is make it all available from the point of view of a knowledge transfer point of sort of thing.
Yeah.
Let's see if it works. Is that the right port? No, wrong port. There you go. Let me just try this one. Let me just double check. I think I've 8080. It is 8080. Okay, my bad. Oh, Jenkins is on 80. Sorry, I've just changed my web server port. It's on the wrong port. So basically what I'm just about to show you is share directory, is the diagramming and architectural overview that it that kicks out at the end.
Okay.
Once I find out how to let's change the ports, advanced settings. Annoying. Sorry, it's just something else is on the same port.
Message broker running first?
No, it's the okay. It's the Jenkins is now running on the same port as my web server.
Oh, okay.
Which is causing me a little bit of grief, and so I might just be slack and stop my Jenkins. Services. Okay, let me just stop Jenkins for a second. Not sure, I think that's yours. Jenkins. Just stop that. Okay. And let me just run this one. That's better. Okay. Okay, so now this is our Mongoose web server running on port 8080. So basically this thing is looking at the artifacts that the plugins generated, which are all being punched out as HTML pages and an SVG diagram on the on wherever you decide to put it. So if I find, let me just find a properties file for you. Call demos. This one here. And let me know if you can't read it easily. So this is the property file we've set up for the demonstration project. So it's got things like where you're going to get the code from to do your analysis, which Sonar instance you're looking at, and the last one is this here. It's a path to where it's going to punch out the diagrams and documentation it generates. There's some other settings in here like the header. If you want every single file to have a header in it, you define what your header is, and it goes and checks to make sure that every file has got your copyright or your licensing agreement or whatever you want to stick in there.
Okay.
Or your SQLs, you want to live on a certain package structure, so you tell it you want it to be under this package structure, and if it deviates, it tells you put it in the wrong place, just to try and get that consistency. But I digress, because I wasn't coming here to show you that. I was just coming to show you that, yeah, it kicks out kicks it out in a particular diagram directory, which you set when you run it. Yep. So if I go here, and again, you have to bear with me, my mouth's playing silly buggers. Change the path, set directory, test. Okay, let's try this one now. There you go, demos. Okay, so demos. So we've kicked out one, 12th of May, date modified, broker demo. So this is these are the files it kicks out because we've got a web server running in the background. We just go and look at the generated page, which comes up with our broker overview. So there's two components of this. One is the diagram, and the other one is the summary. So the summary is just some information about all your flows. So just a breakdown of all the flows you have, and a little bit about the documentation. So it pulls out the notes and comments and things like that and presents it as documentation. So if you want to know a little bit about what a flow does, hopefully your documentation will tell you. Then looks at your queue definitions. Okay, so we've got here false, true, false. Okay, so yeah, so so the last three columns, MB is for message broker, DP is data power, SI is Sterling integrator. So the top one, basically it's saying there's a queue being used by data power, not by message broker. So it doesn't actually give you an option to dig into it because the queue is being used by data power, and we don't do diagram generation for data power. But this is to help you from your architectural perspective when you're using a lot of different products to make sure that they're talking and communicating, or the solutions talking to each other, not just the message broker bit. But yeah, if we go into a particular message broker queue, it jumps into the diagram and just says that this particular queue feeds a message into this particular flow, and this particular flow potentially sends out messages to the following three queues. And the following three queues are consumed by various flows. So it looks like Q2 from this diagram is being consumed by two different flows, which is probably also a concern, depending how you set your code up. But yeah, it gives you that little bit of context about how your queue is being used.
And this is kind of what you actually need from on a high level. You don't need to read any line of code.
Yeah. And also it's targeting to the business analyst sort of people that might have a rough idea of how this system works and wants to explain it to someone. So taking a couple of message broker diagrams aren't all that useful, but taking something like this, print it out, and they'll say keep it up to date because it's generated every time you run the analysis. So whenever someone makes a change, the diagram changes, assuming you're making it right to somewhere that the web server's being refreshed from. So hopefully it gives you that extra business level knowledge as well, or business level understanding of, you've written a flow, but how does that flow sit with everything else? And also, which is the main point of this top diagram here. So this is so this here is the spaghetti mess of how all these queues are interacting together. So it's a convoluted example because it's purely done from the point of view of showing what the tool can do, but it gives you a little bit of understanding of, once you run against your own code, hopefully where everything goes. And it's also something that potentially you can use in conjunction with your support people. So if they say, well, I know a particular queue is broken, what does that affect?
Yeah, no, I like that. The support side of it is massive because they don't need to understand the code. They just need to understand the routing and how the things connect together in order to support it properly.
Yeah. So the diagram is based on just queue definitions. It's not. I've got a lot of smarts in at the moment. We're still progressing with building functionality. So next step would be looking at how web flows or SOAP messages and HTTP connections work to make sure that we can associate things together to be able to identify when things are coming in, when things are coming out via other channels. And also it doesn't see through aliases. So if you write to an alias, it just shows up as an alias. It doesn't see through the alias to what the final queue is. So, and same with publish subscribe. So if you've got something that is actually writing to a topic, it just shows up as a topic at the moment. It doesn't show up as all the integration or the interactions that topic will be publishing to. But yeah, we're still working through adding new functionality. And then there's a bunch of tabs for various things. So probably the most interesting one from a team collaboration point of view, I think, is the SQL one. So it's attempting to find something that you can take to your DBAs, or something that DBAs can look at regularly to help you look at efficiency and I guess prevent bottlenecks from the database perspective. So rather than being any big surprises, hopefully it's something they can do as part of their continuous I guess, their continuous inspection. So they can always monitor what's happening in the database at a runtime perspective. But this hopefully gives them an idea of all the total types of total types of SQL that the application can run. And so between that and the ability to check indexes and tables and columns, hopefully gives a bit more protection from instances down the track where the database just got walloped one day and everything ground to a halt. And because also this is what's potentially going to be called, it might help you with some of those edge cases where a particular piece of logic doesn't get executed all that often, and test harnesses aren't what they are for message broker and alternative tools like that. So it's possible you're not executing all your paths through your code. So you may have a couple of edge scenarios where you get some unusual code and you just want to make sure that's not going to cause issues, performance or resource contention, lock contention. What else is here? And then there's some more. The other probably interesting one is for new developers is it tries to work out what your common SQL functions are. So things that don't sit within modules or filter modules or compute modules. So trying to work out what your I guess your helper class, the equivalent of a helper class is.
Yeah.
So it gives you, so if you see here you've got 5 things called convert date to X, then you might want to start looking at whether you can rationalize that code. Which actually reminds me, I forgot to mention one of the other things it does do. Just one here. Talking about common code and rationalizing code. There is a code duplication check in there, which isn't as useful as potentially we want it to be, just because of the nature of a lot of SQL, where you have these copy messages and copy headers and copy message headers and copy bodies that look kind of the same, but it does give you the ability to try and work out whether or not you do have large chunks of code being duplicated. So unfortunately in this case it's just identified that you've got copy message headers all over the place, but yeah, so not as useful as we want it to be. So we are looking to tune that to see if we can make it ignore certain types of code, but that sits within the Sonar ecosystem as well. I think that's it.
What sort of information do you have regarding? So this sort of dives into a little bit more from a build perspective. Can you promote these, like, how can I say, like, obviously through Jenkins you can deploy to all your environments.
Yep.
Is there sort of like a, how can I say, like unit tests that you could attach to this sort of thing? Is there a way, is there any that sort of thing, or is this purely to do code validation?
Purely to do code validation. We have toyed with the idea of possibly introducing some sort of instrumentation on some of these things, just to work out what code paths are being executed and try and get some sort of code coverage. We haven't been pushing. We've been thinking about. We haven't been pushing too hard on it because not that we have a huge number of clients in our client base, but the customers we have don't have the concept of that level of testing.
Okay.
So if a customer does come along and say, "Oh, we've written this unit testing framework, can you introduce some? Can you if you can introduce some code coverage for us?" We'd definitely put it up higher up on our radar. But at the moment, it's just be a functionality I don't think anyone would be using because they don't have the concept of that level of unit testing.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just wanted to sort of understand the thought process, because obviously spending years in message broker and IIV, you kind of get like, and all these guys are from the Java world, and I mean, I played around in the Java space enough to know about things like code coverage and unit test coverage and things like that. So
Yeah.
to have that sort of facility, I mean, this what you're showing me now is exactly the step in the right direction for something like message broker that I need. But the next step, obviously, is the unit test side, the automated regression testing, the facility to be able to take your flows and make sure that for every code piece of change, nothing changes.
Yeah.
But I suppose that's like this is a step in the right direction for that to actually happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason we couldn't, because by building the static analysis tool, we are getting the benefits of being able to leverage off that to produce the diagrams and generate a lot of information afterwards, because we've already done that work. So in theory, to rebuild the flows, it's something we can look at. To rebuild them and redeploy them to include that sort of unit test coverage is something we know it's technically feasible. There's not a lot of business advantage for us doing it yet, because there's no customer base that would go, yep, we'll give you some money for it, which is a bit short-sighted in some ways. But yeah, we are preferring to build things out which are a bit more functionally useful. Like I said, we want to build up the diagramming to look through aliases and look through topics and topics to subscriptions. What else? Yeah, we're still bulletproofing all our checks, because we'll have a piece of code that's been checked for a while, and then someone will code a particular way, and when we're doing presentations, someone will say, oh, well, that's unusual, it doesn't quite cater for that particular scenario. So just bulletproofing all the different ways that people can write code, which is massive numbers of permutations. I mean, we're just sort of enhancing it in the direction where people are getting value. So if someone gets value from having a unit test framework, yeah, it's definitely something we can consider.
Okay, great. I'm happy. Just one or two more questions.
Yeah, no, go for your life.
Is there anything you want me to... ease of installation and things like that?
Well, that's a bit of a toughie. It's not difficult. If you come from a Java world, it's pretty easy. It's just a matter of setting a couple of Java home. Just setting a couple of Java home parameters. As long as you've got the admin password to the database, creating a blank schema, dropping a file in a directory, and starting it. But it is usually the sticking point with people. That's where we spend most of our time in support of actually helping them get things installed.
Okay, so then on that basis, then, if I said to you, I've got a scenario wanting to trial this.
Yep.
I'd like to play around and see how it would work in my space.
Yep. There was a downloadable VM that we've just shared on Dropbox, which actually has this already fully loaded, ready to go. The only thing is then you have to mess around with the Mint installation, all that sort. We have to play within Mint. So depending on how comfortable we are with Mint, depends on how comfortable we are with getting up and running. But there's fairly detailed steps in the instructions in the manual, which I'll just bring up here of how to set it up. Yeah, I mean, it's just there's a little bit of organization. You just have to be friendly with your DBA, because they need to provide a schema for you. And a Unix admin if you're going to set up on a Unix box. Otherwise, you can actually run the whole thing on your desktop with just a Java.
Okay.
Tutorial support. I'm going to put it downloads, maybe. Manual. Let me just have a look, and this is actually being updated because we've got summary, document generation. Sorry, hopefully I'm not scrolling too quickly. Okay, here we go. Installation guide. So basically just download Java, set Java home to wherever you download it to. Make sure that Java comes up. oops. You make sure Java comes up. Download SonarQube. Start the server. Oh, and page has disappeared. You should just be. It should just come up to say, Sonar's running, and then you just drop the plugin in the plugins directory and restart Sonar. So the most complicated thing there is setting Java home.
So everything is configurable and it's documented and stuff. So if I wanted to go and play around with an installation, I could go ahead and do it.
Yeah, pretty simply.
What are the limitations of what I can download as opposed to the full thing, the full?
The demos, the whole thing. It's just time limited. I don't know I can't remember what the expiry date. I think it's like another 6 weeks on the current one that I've been sending out. But if you need longer than that, so yeah, I think it's about 6 weeks the demonstration. So, and if that runs out, then just send us an email. We'll send you another one.
Okay, and then from a client perspective, I mean, I don't know what has been told to you with regards to my role, my company, etc., etc. What do you understand of the situation?
Yeah, no, Charlene didn't mention. I believe you a system integrator sort of company, but she didn't tell me too much details.
Okay, so I mean, a lot of our clients are corporates, enterprises, and fairly large financial companies, insurance companies, etc., etc. So it's only them that really can afford the IBM products.
Yep.
In reality, but the one client at the moment has a large focus on CI, and I've been working on Message Broker for a number of years, and one of the pains that I've faced is trying to find these sorts of tools. So I've built all sorts of wrappers and enhancers and things like that to do something like what the SonarQube is doing. Building and scripts, running, using all sorts of Ant GUIs and things like that to do the sort of functionality. And it's not easy because unless you've got company buy-in, it doesn't give you the support that you need in order to successfully fulfill something like this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for the first time, at the company that I'm helping, they have a massive drive towards continuous integration and automation of everything, which is why I'm sort of asking about the unit tests as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sure.
But for the most part, the automation of the builds is huge, and the coverage and things like that. So I can definitely see a benefit for this currently. But for that company alone, TSC, however, where we are at, would we need to acquire a license, or do we become the intermediary, or what? What would be the? Because obviously, if I go to the client now and say, okay, I found a really good tool, and they go, okay, well, how much does it cost? How do we get it, etc., etc. On a high level, I mean, I don't want to have to go into monetary terms now at all, because that's not my place.
Yep.
But just to be able to technically explain to the customer, okay, well, this is what you're in for.
Okay. Yeah, so because it sits in this continuous integration space, we do encourage people to host their own, which just gives them that level of control, and it's their code anyway. So there's no additional or there's extra legal things about, well, if some of our codes sort of shared in the cloud or anything like that, or hosted in an integrator's version control system, who owns it, and all that sort of stuff. So the easiest thing is just, from business perspective, is just having their own local setup.
Yeah.
That way they can continue and build their own process and provide their education. So we provide, generally speaking, of the basic support we provide is helping people get it started up and running. And then anytime there's a glitch with the actual running of it, then we're right in there, and we require a sample of the code that's complaining or it's not conforming what they're expecting, and that's when you start getting issues of, well, you'd have to have some code sharing. I mean, it's a code analysis tool, and if we can't see your code, we can't help people. But that's when we get into. We'll see their code, and then the business model we're sort of going with is we like to get them into this sort of automated framework of build, check the quality, and deploy the continuous integration framework. And then from our perspective, we just sit back, and we only get back involved again if we have a new release with new or when we have new features that we send out to everyone, and people ask questions about, is it worthwhile upgrading to that new feature, yes or no, and then it's up to the company to decide when they upgrade. As far as working with integrators, I do believe it's just easier if just the end customer is responsible for the licensing and the purchasing, which can make it more complicated. But then that means you don't have an issue of getting in there and then going, well, who owns it now, and then trying to take it away from the customer. That doesn't bode well for anybody. So if the customer owns it or owns the license for the year, then that's the simplest way. It does add a bit more paperwork because they generally move slower than other people. But yeah.
No, I'm more than happy with that as an avenue. And then with regards to possibly some code that TSC has, obviously we would be a customer in our own right.
Yep, and then that would be your own license. But I think if you're doing us good business, I'm sure we could see our way to just having you a freebie one.
Because we've got some internal code and stuff like that. That, I mean, for me, this is, as I say, when I first saw the little YouTube video of the link, I was asked if I was keen to see this, and I absolutely said yes. This is exactly up my avenue of things that I want to see in the product. I have a big passion for CI and actually making it happen. So yeah, I think what I need to do is maybe get your email address and download the VM that you say, and then
let me just kick you an email.
Try and tell the guys, because they have a very large focus on Linux-based OSs. So I'm actually odd man out at the moment in running a Windows desktop, which is usually the reverse. So the guys are looking at me a bit funny, going, "You still have a Windows desktop? How quaint." Well, I don't think Mint or any of that sort of OS that the VM is going to be a problem.
No, I wouldn't expect so. It's I think there's two. One's the open export VM, which can run on any VM. One's a VirtualBox one, and we're sort of setting up both because the VirtualBox one's in a state ready to go, while the other one requires you to restart everything. So if you can get a VirtualBox, which we can send a link to as well. What's your email address there, Ryan? And I'll just
you can send it to various. I think the easiest at the moment would be ryan.roberts@tsctech.
ryan.roberts
at
tsctech.
No, yeah, tsctech.com.
Okay. Just check this.
If you don't mind me asking,
Are you at your desk now? I'll just kick it off you.
No, I'll be able to receive it now.
Yeah, I'll just send it now to make sure I got the right address, and then let me just find it there. So where's my Dropbox?
I suppose in many respects, creating this tool was birthed out of the same frustrations that I'm having now. The fact that there isn't something like this around, and somebody actually just spent the time to invest into something that would facilitate exactly what was required.
Yeah. Well, I think the first time I sort of played around with this was it was after a bad code review. When I was told I wasn't conforming to the standards, that no one could tell me what they were, but I wasn't conforming to them if they could find them.
That's always part of the trouble, especially with architecture. They're standards, but they're so difficult to find.
Yeah. For the plugin, so this one I'm sending two links. One's just the plugin. One's the VM and manual. And so you normally put more stuff in the I normally put more stuff in the email, but just double check that you received that.
I shall do.
Let me just double check. There's I think a few other things in that folder. I should probably send you this as well. You got an email. Okay, and then there's the actual whole 4.31 instance of Sonar, which we know it definitely works well under. Yep. Okay, hang on. Okay, that's sharing. And then I'll just send you this last one, which is the top level directory.
There you go. MB links.
And then this last one. This is the and this last one is it's got an actual fully fledged Sonar in there as well. So once you've installed Java, you can just unzip this thing and off you go. Sorry, can you give me a second, Ryan? One sec.
Sure, no problem.
Yep. Sorry about that. Just my wife seeing what's happening. Yeah, so you should have two emails. One for just the links we discussed, and the other one's just all the other files. There's a in there. If you open it up, there's a zip file called sonar-4.3.1-demo.zip, which has got a whole Sonar instance in there.
I see the VM is 2.2.
Yeah,
which
yeah,
isn't actually very big at all, considering it's a VM.
Yeah.
Okay. Sonar 413 demo.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's that, and the only other thing I'll quickly find a link for you is the last thing, which I think this is all linked in the manual as well, but I'll send it to you anyway. So now we're on 2.4. Okay, so the last one is the actual plugin to run it. Yeah, so it doesn't play well with mostly it works okay with Ant, and works. You can turn on what's called the Sonar plugin in Jenkins, which just wraps up all the infrastructure for you. But doesn't play too well with Maven, unfortunately.
That's all right. Jenkins is the preferred tool anyway. Just on a slightly off note, what is your experience like? What have you found with the tool? Like, is it something that, I mean, obviously you're promoting it, but on a personal level, is it something that you've enjoyed using? Is it like?
You mean Message Broker?
Well, the combination, I guess, Message Broker with the Sonar Cube. Has it enhanced your development?
I don't do a lot of development of more targeting at more purely the tools aspect. So we've actually got a version for Sterling and a version for SAS. Something SAS. So we don't actually do a lot of. We don't do like outsourced development for anyone. We just do purely just this tool side of things. I mean, I definitely think in the places I have worked, it's definitely a useful thing. Even if you ignore the 168 checks there and just look at simple things like variables and things like that, just that simple stuff to help clean up your code that you take for advantage of in every other environment, but not Message Broker. So, it's and if I had something like this when I was starting out, then when I first started using Message Broker about 5-6 years ago, then it would have definitely saved me a lot of confusion, because it's not a syntactically simple language, or it's not. It's not syntactically natural language if you come from another programming language.
Yeah, correct. That's kind of what I've found. It's so proprietary that you really have to be quite a specialist to really dive into the nitty-gritty of it all.
Yeah. And I think it's just the way IBM's attacked it, trying to get their vendor lock-in to make it so proprietary that you can't get off it. But that being said, I used to work in a TIBCO shop where I was a couple of years ago, and every week they'd have a job on Sunday where someone would log in from home and they'd restart all their TIBCO service, because they couldn't guarantee more than 15 or 16 days of running these things in a row before it would crash. The first guy I was working with for Message Broker, they've had like two unusual production outages for it since they had it a couple of years ago. They're not enhancing any further. They're not doing any more development, which is why he said, "Well, I'm not buying it because we're not developing." Okay, fair enough. But yeah, I mean, it's very stable. Once it works well. And usually things like your infinite loops that queue off your execution groups, you usually know them reasonably early on. So every time you release something, you might get a go bang and say, "Okay, well, I need to fix that," which is where I guess you get your continuous improvement and your continuous quality tools come into it. But once you've got over those hurdles of making sure your deployments are working well, that the tool itself seems to just hum along nicely.
Well, I think that's kind of the focus that I'm after, is also from a technical lead point of view, that I want to know that the code coming to me through the developers is going to be quality, and I need a way of making sure that they are publishing good code. On a standard. I don't want to have to go through every single line to assure that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've got one customer. They've got a what they call it, an integration hub or integration center of excellence. But they've basically got a team of 4 or 5 in one area, and they've got a team of 15 in another part of the country. And they use this as a gatekeeper. We've done some custom development for them, and they're always interested in the new rules, but there's certain things that they're specifically interested in. That's what they're using it for, and it does it well. It does it really well for them, and they're happy. And it just saves them mountains of time having peer reviews where they go through, okay, show me your code. It's like, well, this is not conforming to the 12 or 15 points that we talked about on and off the last couple of weeks. Do it again. Exactly. It just stops that. It just stops wasting all that time. So the reviews they're now doing now are a lot more value add rather than just you haven't turned on the monitoring events. So they don't see anything until it's at least at what they say is like the minimum standard, which works for us because it means they can filter out a lot of the chaff, and when they get to when they get into the nitty gritty, they go, oh, okay, well, we'd like a check that does this, and then we talk to them and look to see if we can help them out, and then that's one less thing that they need to worry about in their code reviews.
It reduces the need for the amount of developers, but it also adds so much value with regards to the developers themselves, because they can actually start thinking and coding better from the get-go.
Yeah.
They're not just hacking at the code the whole time, hoping that it works.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's a protection and investment. It's a risk mitigation thing too, because you don't want to have a cowboy developer come in and do some quite brilliant code that no one understands, that doesn't conform to the standards, and then if it doesn't work out, you've got that risk of how do you, particularly when you don't have that code coverage tools, how do you manage or maintain or enhance that code?
Exactly. No, as I said, like, you don't have to try and convince me. When I first saw the little clip, this is something that I was quite keen to see. So, well, thank you. I'm happy. I'm quite keen to go and try and play and see what I can figure out.
Yeah. Okay. I'll let you back on with your day then. Just let me know if there's anything we can help with.
Well, thank you, Richard. I really appreciate you spending the time to show this to me.
That's all right, Ryan. I hope you get something out of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
If I have a question, do I just reply to the support at Coding Tools?
Yeah, just that email's probably the easiest one.
Okay, 100%.
If we need to, we can always tee up another webinar.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan.
Okay. Cheers.
Enjoy your day. Okay, bye.